Barak Yahweh, Barak Yahushua, Barak Yahweh, Barak Yahushua, Barak Yahweh, Barak Yahushua, Kolayim La, Arnawa Yahweh, Bashim Shamalak Yahushua, Bashim Kadash, double honors to the apostle, Elsber, Milton, peace, citation, hopeful elect, Shalom. So the title of this article says right here from KSNB, Local 4, it says 80% of Americans ages 17 to 24 are unfit for military service. And it says the United States has seen military enlistment numbers drop, and there's a big reason behind that. This is published on March 19, 2023. It says Grand Island, Nebraska, KSNB, in parentheses. The United States has seen military enlistment numbers drop, and there's a big reason behind that. According to a study from Department of Defense, 80% of Americans between the ages of 17 to 24 are unfit for military service. Reasons for people have been deemed unfit are being overweight, drug use, or physical and mental health. The U.S. Army has been trying to combat that with a 90-day program called the Future Soldiers Preparatory Course. And quote, say they go to the course for aptitude, they'll learn a lot of the basic knowledge stuff that you need in order to pass the ASVAB and qualify for a job in the Army, said Michael Carroll, First Sergeant at Grand Island Detachment. And quote, if you go for the obesity version, you'll work with Army nutritionists and soldiers that specialize in fitness. The course has been in place since August of 2022. And Carroll said the program has a 93% success rate, adding particular areas of the military has seen a 35% drop in the enlistment. Also contributing to the enlistment drop is simply a general disinterest in joining the military. And quote, what I would say to those young people is, to come in and talk to us, ask any questions that you have about the service, about what it means to serve in the Army, said Carroll. Just walking in the door doesn't mean you're going to join. You can come in here, you can get information. Information is free. Other veterans feel changing the military narrative is pivotal to appealing military service to American youth. And quote, cover the good stories, said Michael Sorrell, CEO of Talent Word Group. And quote, cover the stories about veterans doing amazing work. And yes, cover the stories about some veterans who are struggling, and let's talk about the solutions we can put in place. But do not paint in broad strokes veterans as these broken warriors. Sorrell served 20 years in the military and said we have to be cautious and conscious about the narrative in regards to the military, adding the United States Army is the largest supplier of the college scholarships in the country. And quote, Hollywood does not do a good job of representing the military, said Sorrell. And quote, Hollywood shows an archetype of what a soldier or marine or special operator is, but they got it wrong. The most lethal warriors in the world who I had the privilege to serve alongside they were kind, they were empathetic, they were respectful, they were amazing human beings. Sorrell said he would like to see people focus more on the military success stories. There's a few articles I have to bring out as well, but I'm not really going to go too much into the reading of it. So, it says right here in this article by Vice.com, it says Pentagon says Nintendo generation has weak skeletons, and that generation will basically be, Gen Z. And when it's coming to Nintendo gaming consoles, those you see, even in the 80s and 90s they had pretty much like gaming consoles back then, but you started to see more often that the gaming consoles had advanced over time during like the 2000s, even to this time where you have like the Wii U, and then eventually the Nintendo Switch, and then they had the DS, the 3DS, and the 2DS, pretty much things like that. So those gaming consoles, whether they be handheld or whether they be actually like home consoles, uh, they pretty much got advanced over time, and those games also pretty much became a little bit more entertaining over time. And Gen Z pretty much grew up in that generation where they pretty much, was playing a lot of advanced games over time, as they gotten older. Um, Other than that, let me get into this article. It says a military press release announced that Gen Z may be at risk for more injuries in boot camp. According to a U.S. Army major, America's youth are living a sedentary life, and that means that they, usually like to sit around a lot and, you know, mostly being on the computer and shit and playing like video games, like I said. It says that makes them fragile, prone to injury, and harder to successfully and easily transition from civilian life to the military. The news comes from an official press release posted on the Defense Visual Information Distribution Service, a hub of official pictures, videos, and news published by the Pentagon. The article titled "Why Today's Gen Z is at Risk for Boot Camp Injuries" interviewed Army Major John Mark DeBodo, um, a clinical coordinator in charge of medical readiness at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. When asked about the youth of today, Major DeBodo was straightforward and quote, "The Nintendo generation soldier skeleton is not toughened by activity prone to arrival, so some of them break more easily," he said. Captain Lydia Blondin, Assistant Chief of Physical Therapy at Leonard Wood Army Community Hospital, detailed the kind of injuries she's seen in the so-called Nintendo generation. And quote, "We see injuries ranging from acute fractures and falls to tears in the ACL to muscle strains or stress factors, with the overwhelming majority of injuries related to overuse," she said. The rest of the press release urged those looking to join the Army to do some basic fitness prep before coming to boot camp. Injuries and basic training are nothing new, and neither is the Pentagon or the U.S. government shaming children into eating less and exercising more. In 1960, then President-elect John F. Kennedy penned an op-ed in Sports Illustrated where he opined about the soft American. Um, so the China generation is a new spin on the soft American, but it's also outdated. The generation of kids who parents thought Nintendo was a stand-in for all video games were Generation X and Millennials. Back in the days, the Nintendo Entertainment System and Super Nintendo Entertainment System dominated popular cultural conceptions of video games. If Gen Z, which is far more likely to have grown up playing Minecraft, Call of Duty, or Fortnite, saw that Major DeBoto was still thinking of them as the Nintendo generation, they'd probably think it's really embarrassing for him. It's cringe, as they would say. Not everyone in the military thinks the younger generation is soft. Retired Navy Admiral William H. McRaven, former head of Special Operations Command, once said that anyone calling millennials soft had never, in quotes, seen them in a firefight in Afghanistan. Despite Major DeBoto's problems with the Nintendo generation, the Pentagon has been actively courting them over the past few years by dropping millions of dollars on schemes to make Navy sailors and Army soldiers into esports stars on Twitch. The Nintendo generation didn't care for it much. So with that, I'll bring out a couple more scriptures, and Lord willing, make this lesson edifying. So in Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 11 says, "And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, and having neither bars nor gates, to take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thine hand upon the desolate places that are not inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations, which have gotten cattle and goods, that dwell in the midst of the land." Exactly, and this is exactly a perfect description of America as it already is when it's coming to defense and military defense. Like, America's pretty much weak at this point. I mean, when you see that how they're gonna have to force a draft And then one thing about this stupid ass generation, like Gen Z mainly, um, one thing about Americans in general, they're just really dumb, right? Here it is where people born in America could be dumb, but like other people, if they want to come to this country, they have to take a test and be smart and shit like that. And that's a shame, you know, that other immigrants that before they come to America, they have to get tested, and a lot of times on average, they're smarter than the average American. And they're even smarter than even if they have like let's say, an average level of academic knowledge, they'll be smarter than a fucking, I'll say, a a valedictorian or a 3.5 or 4.0 GPA American, you know. And when you look at that stupid educational system, like, don't get me wrong, not everybody that goes to school and that have good grades is dumb and all, but it's just that some people really think that that's, you know, real intelligence, and that's really not, because there's a lot of people, like, it almost seems like, you know, almost everyone at that point, but it's just a lot of people in general that have those high grades and shit like that go to school and have a degree. They need a certification to show how intelligent they are, and they can't do simple basic things that require, common sense. But aside from that, the main point I'm trying to get at is, what I'm trying to say is that, like, this country, they're pretty much gonna lose their means of protecting themselves, because you already have like UN troops here and shit like that, and then you got nations, uh, like North Korea, Russia. They really training. They got um, their weapons, their weaponry. You know, they got their military, pretty much working on the super soldier project. So imagine when they start invading this country, it's gonna be over, for these Americans. And what America's famously known for is putting hell upon other nations, and their peoples that reside there. That's what Americans are known for, you know. So how much more when these other nations, these UN troops, start putting hell upon our people, in America, mainly talking about, the nation of our people, 2/3, Because, I mean, don't get me wrong, Americans are already hated in general, but you being an Israelite, like so-called Black, Hispanic, Native American, like, you're the most hated, you know? And even to some extent, like, the white Americans are really hated too, to be honest, because of how prideful Esau is, and the fact that Esau, what you call it, he's over here pushing that LGBTQ in other countries, and that's another thing too. This country is so stupid. They're over here banning the generals and people in the army that speak against the LGBTQ. You know, so now you have it to where people in the army is really starting to lose their jobs if they speak against the LGBTQ, and they have to allow all type of trainings to work in the military. And then even these women that act what you call it, like, they're independent and shit like that, for them to be out in war. First of all, a woman has no, um, let's say, business being in the military. You feel me? So, because a woman is not really as physically capable as a man to really handle, being out on the battlefield. But when it's coming to a country like America that have all this equality bullshit, and you know, this whole thing where they want to put women above men, all that feminism they want to push out, this place is fucking done for. And mind you, they said in those articles that 80% of people ages 17 to 24, that they are unfit for being at war. And then when you look at this whole generation in general, like, a lot of these kids love playing video games. They love and they grew up on that whole idea of eating, 3 meals a day and eating snacks in between. and then they grew up on eating processed foods too. And I did brought out a video a few days ago talking about like the food pyramid and how they give unhealthy you know food options. Like they tell you to have a diet that consists of carbohydrates and things of that nature, and that's actually unhealthy to always consume carbohydrates. And the fact that um, if you try to tell people about fasting on fruits and vegetables or just fasting in general, like people look at you like you're evil for even mentioning that idea. But the thing is that what people really don't understand is the most you should have in a meal is like at least like one meal a day, and having some snacks with that as well if you need to get by, you know. But people don't understand that when it's coming to eating, you should only eat to energize, your body, you know, so your body could gain a certain amount of nutrition so that you can perform certain tasks. You eat to live, you don't live to eat. But Americans, they live to eat, and then it's like at the same time, you know, not only eating all those meals in the day, they're not really physically active, you know. Um, and most of the times because they spend most of their life, watching TV on their free time or just playing video games, being entertained, sitting around all day. That's a problem for the average American. Jeremiah chapter 51 verse 30 says, "The mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. They have remained in their holds. They might have failed. They became as woman. They have burned her dwelling places. Her bars are broken." Yep. And a lot of these, soldiers, uh, pretty much with what I've been mentioning is that, like, if you have Gen Z can't even, like, do the basic training in the military, how much more when they put out on the battlefield in the forced drafts? Exactly. You know, scriptures talk about in Second Ezra, around the 16th chapter, that how, you know, that they mentioned about how widows would be, crying for their, bridegrooms or some, something along those lines because of the fact that how a lot of men is gonna die off in this war, you know. And these are just really beta males, to be honest, because the real true men that the Lord is dealing with is the men of the Lord. He's not dealing with these guys in this world that are so-called men. Because you could be biologically a man because of the fact that you're able to produce seed and testosterone. You're able to you know pretty much your gender is classified as a man, things of that nature. But the fact of the matter is that what really makes you a man is you serving the Most High, you know. And these people, they're not gonna have what it takes to battle in World War III. And it's already prophesied that how this country is gonna be destroyed in World War III. Like, that America's gonna lose that battle mainly. And ultimately that's gonna be the same year that the Yahweh Shah returns and delivers his elect and also contributes to the destruction of America, which is Babylon the Great. So it's already prophesied that this country will lose, and how you know pretty much tells you in Jeremiah 50 and 51 as well about the future state of America, you know. So in Jeremiah 50, let me see, where should I start? I'll start at verse 35 because this whole thing makes sense according to the lesson I brought up with the article, and going along with this precepts as well, talking about how Babylon is going to be at war and how they're going to pretty much lose the battle as well. It says, Verse 35, a sword is upon the Chaldeans, save the Lord, and upon the inhabitants of Babylon, and upon her princes, and upon her wise men. Says, a sword is upon the liars, and they shall dote. A sword is upon her mighty men, and they shall be dismayed. A sword is upon their horses, and upon their chariots, and upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of her. And those chariots is talking about, when it's talking about Esau's, horses and chariots, it's talking about his military, you know, basically his military vehicles, that they use to travel in the skies, like the Air Force. They use like these aerial, military jets, things of that nature, and that's pretty much what they're gonna use to pretty much fight against the Lord and his angels. When the scriptures talk about the dragon, his angels, like Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. That's talking about you know, Yahweh Shai's angels, which is the Lord angels fighting against Esau's military system. And it says, and they shall become as woman. His sword is upon her treasures, and they shall be robbed. A drought is upon her waters, and they shall be dried up. For it is the land of graven images, and they are mad, Salakia, upon their idols. Yep, therefore the wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the island shall dwell there, and the owls shall dwell therein, and it shall be no more inhabited forever, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. As Yahweh overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, the neighbor cities, therefore saith the Lord, so shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell there. And exactly. And that's pretty much a future prophecy that's going to take place. That how no one's going to be able to dwell in the land of America because of the fact that it's going to be a desolate land. Like there's not going to be any life there. The only life that's going to be there is pretty much like desert animals, basically. That's pretty much what it mentions, like the wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the island shall dwell there. Basically animals that desert animals. So verse 41 says, behold, a people shall come from the north, and a great nation, and many kings shall be raised up from the coast of the earth. They shall hold the bow, and the lands they are cruel, and will not shew mercy. Their voice shall roar like the sea, and they shall ride upon horses, every one put in array, like a man to the battle against thee, O daughter of Babylon. The king of Babylon hath heard the report of them that in his hands waxed feeble, anguish took hold of him, and pangs as a woman in travail. Exactly. So that's pretty much a future prophecy that's going to take place, And America has a lot to go through in this World War III. And another thing is like, when it's coming to Esau, he's a house divided, and scriptures say a house divided cannot stand. Don't get me wrong, there's Edomites amongst the nation of Edom that can't handle this whole LGBTQ thing. Some of them are against it, and then you got a majority of them that are for it. And the thing is that Esau, as a nation of people, they're pretty much experiencing a decline in their population, because a lot of their race is dying out, and that's one thing about about Esau, and then on top of it as well, amongst their military, they're experiencing a lot of issues as well. They're over here worrying about trannies being part of the military, and then you got other nations out, and not even that, they also worrying about pushing that LGBTQ agenda amongst other countries such as Uganda. And it's like, this devil's not even worrying about the defense of his own country. This is a good one. So I'll bring out these last few scriptures, then close out. It says, Ezekiel 7 verse 17, all hands shall be feeble, and all knees shall be weak as water. And find it funny that in the article mentioned about how this Nintendo generation, how they're not fit for war because they have weak skeletons, and your knees is part of the skeleton as well. So um, they mentioned about something with a torn ACL, that how uh, this generation will pretty much like get like minor, pretty much like injuries because of how they can't handle boot camp training. And I'm like, imagine when they actually put out in the battlefield and they're forced to fight for this country. So that's gonna come, the World War III drafts. And the funny thing about this generation, they don't understand that, you know, the prophecies of what's gonna happen to this place, and they think it's all a joke. They want to post, make all these memes about, World War II drafts, and you know, they putting it out on YouTube, thinking it's a joke, making all these videos on TikTok. Um, the thing about America is that the Americans are so prideful, and it's a real prideful nation, especially when you're dealing with the wicked amongst our people as well, and seeing how America's been in power for so long, that ever since they dropped those atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they feel as though they've been in power for so long and nobody could take them down, and that's what a lot of Americans think. So when they see, um, you know, things such as like future threats that will happen to America, they think of it as like it comes like nothing to them, because they feel as though America's gonna bounce back from, you know, what you call it, from these threats that's coming from these other nations, and they think America's gonna be able to handle it. And to be honest, as the prophecy says in the Bible, America's gonna be pretty much destroyed, and they ain't gonna handle that. And that sword that was mentioned in Jeremiah 51, or or chapter 50, I think, where I was reading about, that sword is mostly talking about those missiles, because that's also the sword of the Heavenly Father. You best believe that. It says, verse 18, they shall also gird themselves with sackcloth, and horror shall cover them, and shame shall be upon all faces, and baldness upon all their heads. They shall cast their silver in the streets, and their gold shall be removed. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord. They shall not satisfy their souls, neither fill their bowels, because it is the stomach block of their iniquity. Exactly. You're going to find no satisfaction in these times to come. And it says, verse 21, and I will give it into the hands of the strangers for a prey, and to the wicked of the earth for a spoil, and they shall pollute it. My face will I turn also from them, and they shall pollute my secret place, for the robber shall enter it and defile it. And that's basically also what's going to happen to this place as well, and 2/3 of our people, they best believe they're going to get like the worst short end of the stick for, taking sides with Esau, thinking that that this country was their rest, and they want to pretty much be disobedient to hearing the prophets, and they want to follow after the ways of Esau, which is a so-called white man. So by all means, they're gonna be destroyed. But with that, I hope I made it less edifying. I didn't mean to make it as long as it is, but it was all through the Spirit. And I'd like to give all glory, praise, and honor to Adonai Yahweh, Bashim Shamak Yahshua, Bashim Kakadash, Tabana Apostle, the Ellsbury Millstone, Citation, Hope for Elect, Yahweh Shabbat Bakshah, Shalak Rayam, Adawanyam, Wakawayam, Wa Ababa Shalom.